Hey team, welcome back to the channel. First off, we just wanted to say thank you for all the amazing comments that you left on our previous video, which was all about Mackie's everesting attempt. Both that attempt and that video were a lot of work. We figured we would jump on and answer questions, and there were a lot of questions in the comments. We also put out a call for questions on Patreon, so we have questions from our patrons right here. So we're gonna do that, and hopefully that will give you a better idea of what this experience is like.
And why.
Hi team, I'm Sid.
And I'm Mackie.
For the past 6 years, we've been racing mountain bikes professionally.
And living out of our van.
On this channel, we're sharing those adventures with you.
All of them.
So hit subscribe and join the team.
Now you mentioned it, that is the most common question that we got. Why?
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 That's a great question. Honestly, I'm not really sure. I think the reason I decided is because there's no racing this year, and I like to push myself, and usually I do that by racing. I like the competition. I like, comparing my fitness, my abilities to other people, because it kind of gives me an idea of like where I stand. And when there's no racing, you can't do that. Well, that's not true. When there's no racing, it's harder to do that. Strava has been a great way to do it, going for KOMs and stuff. We've done some videos on that. But then I had heard some people talking about this everesting challenge, and I was like, well, that sounds brutal and kind of terrible, but maybe I'll give it a try.
So it wasn't just for YouTube views.
No.
We got a comment saying that, and I'm just like, guys, if we wanted YouTube views, we'd do something a lot easier, like bike reviews or how to do drops. Okay, so our second most frequently asked question was, how long did it take you to recover? Or is it going to take you?
So we are a little over 2 weeks. I think it's like 17 days today. And I feel fairly good at this point. I would say maybe 5 days ago was when I started feeling good enough to consider doing things again, like ride my bike, ride my dirt bike. I did a strength workout this week. But yeah, those first 2 weeks or a week and a half, I was pretty much destroyed. I mean, there really was like, I was grumpy. I was maybe not nice to people like I should have been. Sorry about that. But I was just tired, and it was kind of hard because I was only sore for the first 2 days. The first day it was my knees and my wrists, and that was from climbing really steep trails and descending a very rocky road on a small travel cross-country bike. It's 90 in the rear, 100 in the front, and my wrists were definitely like, yeah, you should have had a 160 mil fork on there. And then the second day it was my glutes and lower back, which makes sense. Those were probably the muscles that I used the most. And after that, I wasn't really sore. And it was sort of hard not being sore, but still being tired, because when you're sore, you're like, right, that's why I feel lousy, because I did a hard thing. And when you're just kind of tired, you're like, why am I being a grump? Yeah.
This next question, been a little scared to ask you this, but I think now we're at this time. We got a couple questions on Patreon. Would you do it again? If so, what would you do differently? And would you consider doing it on a road bike and going for an actual fast time?
Would I do it again on Fraser? No.
Would you ever ride Fraser again?
I probably will eventually, but it will probably be, I'm not sure about that. Okay. It depends if the people I'm riding with really want to ride Fraser, then maybe.
But not on your own.
No, I don't think I'm going to go ride Fraser anytime soon. So would I do it again? Not the way I did it.
Yeah.
Once was plenty. What was the second part of that question?
Would you repeat this on a road bike on a perfectly chosen road climb and see how fast you can be? Basically, would you go for a record attempt? And I think we should clarify, there are a lot of comments, especially in our prep videos, where people are saying, you should do it at sea level to get a faster time. And this was never a record attempt. Like, no. Obviously.
I considered trying to do like a fastest time initially.
There wasn't really anywhere here that we could do that. You really need like the perfect road climb that's extremely steep on short distances, because Mackie's overall distance was like 122 miles and it was on dirt, whereas the people who are setting the records are doing a much shorter route with that same amount of climbing and they're on pavement. So it's different. But would you consider doing that?
Right now, no. That doesn't sound appealing. Would I consider it sometime? Maybe. What would I do differently? Not doing it sort of sounds like a pretty good option right now.
What would I do differently? Not have done it.
Or like do it on a much easier road or on pavement. Like,
I don't really see you doing it again unless you thought you had a climb that could be a record or like a fastest time. Otherwise, what's the point? You did it. You know you can do it.
And honestly, I'm never gonna beat the roadie records.
No.
I'm just
Alberto Contador had it for a while. All right, let's get into these sort of nittier, grittier.
Nittier, grittier? Those weren't nittier, gritty enough.
All right, question from Joanne. Mackie, during your everesting attempt at your lowest, hardest, unbearable moment where you thought about quitting, what kept you going?
It's a good question. The messages, the playlist that you put together.
Yep.
Definitely like
Jeremy McGee
knowing that there were people who were rooting for me, who were supporting me. That definitely helped. We put that Everesting challenge out and people knew that I was doing, like I publicly stated my goal.
It's like accountability.
Yeah. And I think that's a big part of it is like when you publicly state a goal or even just like to your friends or family state a goal, there are people who are holding you accountable. I also had a lot of people who had been up there since 4 o'clock in the morning supporting me. And well, I sort of felt like I couldn't just quit.
Mike and I were just gonna like force you to keep going, pretty much.
I mean, the other thing, honestly, is knowing that we were going to put it on YouTube. Like, that's just accountability at an entirely different, huge level. Also, I don't like quitting things. Let's be real.
I don't think you ever thought about, like, oh, I'm just going to stop this. I feel like there was definitely like a moment where you were like, I don't know if my legs will keep going.
I don't know. Like, I cramped, but I never cramped really badly.
Excellent segue into our next question from Bill. How do you manage cramping? How do you subject your body to such a brutal workout and keep it from shutting down on you?
Very broad understanding of cramping. Cramping is not what people usually think of, which is like a lack of electrolytes. They've done studies and they've actually found that cramping is your muscles essentially getting overloaded by doing too much work in cramping. Electrolytes do matter because if your electrolyte balance is low and you're dehydrated, your level at which your body starts cramping is lower. So it's not that like electrolytes don't matter, they do matter, but it's not a lack of electrolytes that makes you cramp. It's your muscles doing more work than they can, basically. So the biggest thing was training for it. Like I did those 2 days in a row where I did 4 laps of Fraser and then went and did like an 11-hour ride. Those two together, I was just like, I just have to keep going, and that sort of helped train my muscles. Did a lot of work with Mike. I was very fit. I was very strong for it. So that sort of set the level where I would cramp really, really high.
And you have a base of like 17 years of racing and riding bikes. So your level of when you're going to cramp is high, but you did cramp.
I did cramp.
So then what?
So that's something that I have learned through, once again, a lot of experience in racing, is I can ride through cramps. And basically, like, I just keep pedaling. And there's some interesting things you can do. Like, there's the pickle juice thing that people talk about. I've never really done that, but apparently it works really well for people. But what our coach Mike told us once is that you can punch your cramp. And apparently the, like, shock to the muscle of, like, punching, like a traumatic force to it, will often make it relax. And so I definitely was like punching my hamstring.
Like, this is how you finish this Everest, is just like beating yourself. Go, Mackie, go, go!
So I was punching my hamstring to try to get it to release, and it did release. And really it was like one section where it tried to cramp a couple of times, and I was able to sort of ride through it, and then right after that it leveled off, and then I was able to soft pedal, which sort of allows the muscle to like recover a little bit.
I think there were a couple things contributing to making cramping not be like a primary problem of this effort, and one is it wasn't hot. And
it was cloudy and it was at altitude, so like I had a lot of, temperature-wise, I had a lot of things
Well, and also the fact that it's at altitude means you often hit like a cardiovascular wall before you hit a muscular wall.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
true.
Finally, like doing that long of an effort, you were never going hard, quote unquote. I almost think cramping can be more of an issue in a like cross-country race at sea level in the heat. If that's your situation, you may want to look into it more and not base that off of what Mackie was doing.
Yeah.
Okay, so question from Ian. Have you received good vibes from your sponsors for doing stuff like this since you can't go racing?
I mean, I'd say yeah.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Our goal on this channel is to like get people excited to ride their bikes and to push themselves and to maybe try something that they never have, whether that's a race or a challenge or just riding a mountain bike for the first time. And obviously no racing, so we can't focus on that stuff. So we were just like, great, what other things can we do? And this was one of them.
Are you glad you took the challenge, and has anything come out of it that has surprised you?
I am glad I did the challenge because
Would you have said that 2 weeks ago when I asked you?
Yeah, I probably would have still, because like it's fun to set a really big goal and then prepare for it and train for it and do the work necessary and then complete that goal.
Would you have said
It's very
that at
rewarding.
lap 9 or 10?
No, probably not. But I knew coming into this that this was going to be type 2 fun, which is fun after the fact. Like while I was doing it, the first couple laps I was like, this is cool, I'm feeling good. And then after the first couple laps I was like, I feel terrible.
Has anything come out of it that has surprised you?
I was surprised that I was only sore for 2 days.
Yeah.
Honestly, I would have thought that like, I was not surprised that I was exhausted,
Yeah.
but I was surprised that I was only sore for 2 days. I would have assumed that I'd be sore for longer. I was also surprised by how invested everybody was and like how supportive everyone was, because that, I don't know, like I knew this was a personal challenge, but it was really cool to hear people say that like it inspired them to do a challenge or to ride their bike that day or like, you know, to push through a hard climb that they were working on. Like all of those, the broader community effect that it had was really cool, but also a surprise to me.
Cool. What would you change about your bike setup if you did it again? Tires, suspension, etc.
I don't think I'd change anything, really.
We wouldn't run a trail casing the whole way?
No,
Okay.
because honestly, like yeah, I flatted and I was running a race casing, which is the super lightweight one. But looking at the cut, it was like a sidewalk cut that was like that big. I'm not sure that a trail casing would have made any difference, frankly.
There's just a lot of sharp rocks.
sharp
I don't
rocks.
think the GoPro footage really does justice to either how steep this was and also just like how many rocks.
While I was doing it, I was thinking I should have put on a smaller chain ring. The problem is if
We
I
would have
put
been
on
there
a
till
smaller,
midnight.
yeah, if I put on a smaller chain ring, I would have been able to go slower overall, and I was already going really freaking slow.
Related question, when you broke your wheel, what was your reason for choosing the new wheel over the new bike? I believe when filming, I accused Mackie of wanting a longer break.
Apparently he just wants the wheel, not the whole bike, but I think he just wants more of a break. He's like, if they give me a bike, I'll just have to start riding again. Don't you think that's what he's thinking?
I think that's exactly what he's thinking, that like if I like because we can do the bike in
Like
2 seconds.
Right, the wheel will take us
Like-
longer.
the wheel will take 8.
He later told me that that was not the case.
Well, first of all, I never broke a wheel. I just flatted
That's
a tire.
true. Yeah, that got lost.
yeah,
Well,
so-
your dad told my dad on the phone, and by the time it got to me, it was a broken wheel.
I flatted a tire. I put a plug in, realized that the hole was way too big, the plug wasn't gonna hold. Put a tube in, blew it up, and my tube had a hole in it.
Okay, so that might be something you would have changed.
That is definitely
Check your
something I would have
tubes.
changed. I would have checked my tube beforehand to make sure it didn't have a hole. So I wrote it down on the rim, with a tire on it. It is still true, and there are no
Yeah.
dents. We checked it recently.
Yeah, it's kind of a miracle wheel.
The reason I just wanted a different wheel instead of swapping bikes was because the bike I was on is my bike and the spare bike is Sid's bike, and I just hadn't spent as much time on it, and I wasn't sure. Like I checked all the measurements, I had set it up well, I had ridden it to make sure it felt okay, but I wasn't sure if it was going to feel as good, and so I figured the bike that I was on was treating me well. I should just stick with it because swapping a wheel is easy and you're not really changing like your saddle shape or anything at all. Everything's the same, you just have a different wheel.
Did training for and doing this massive ride get you inspired to do any endurance races post-COVID, or do you think you'll go back to focusing primarily on enduro?
Before COVID happened, this year we had talked about a schedule of a variety of stuff, and that included epic rides, events, so like Whiskey Off-Road and a number of those. It included some enduros.
I mean, I think we can tell you guys at this point, Mackie was going to race Meg Avalanche this year. And we're super, I would say that's the thing that we're probably the most bummed about that didn't happen. Obviously, like, you were going for like a pretty wide swath of things this year already.
Endurance events, enduro, Mega Avalanche, like I was gonna race a variety of stuff. I would still like to do that. I really enjoy enduro. I think it's a cool format, but also I realized that I missed the feeling of being in really, really, really good cross-country shape. You have to train differently, and that's fun. And so I think moving forward, we will continue to do a big variety of events, and I would like to stay in the kind of shape that I'm in right now, but keep the skills that I gained that I didn't have when I was racing cross-country before.
From trails to ales, are there any other pro racers against whom you've competed that you know are doing self-designed challenges to keep motivated and fit? Did you send a message to the racing community with this effort?
To be honest, I'm not sure how many, if any, of our fellow racers watch our YouTube channel. Racing and YouTube are two very different things, and we are beginning to see overlap, I think partially because of us, but it's just not really like the thing in mountain bike racing. People are like, I'm a racer and that's it.
I think there are definitely other racers who have been doing challenges like this, like especially endurance racers a handful have done Everesting challenge. Payson did a single track one. Keegan Swenson set the record on the road. It was broken pretty quickly, but he did set a record. Everybody's bored.
At least the ones we've heard of, it's primarily the endurance athletes.
Yeah. I think this is my favorite question from Fabio. Of all the main MTV personalities on YouTube, who do you think might be able to replicate what you did with similar results?
I mean, should I be honest here?
You should be honest.
Nobody.
Of the main mountain bike personalities, no. One person who does have a big channel who I think could give it a go is also a Niner athlete, Dylan Johnson. He's a CTS coach. He's an endurance racer.
Yep. Carrie Warner and Payson both have YouTube channels.
They do have YouTube channels, yeah.
But I wouldn't say their channel viewership is not at the same sort of level that ours is.
See it, Brian.
All right,
He's
BKXC.
Probably.
I challenged Paul the punter.
Paul's like, I hate
and
you
Bobo
right
too.
Now.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe all of them combined. Maybe.
Oh, that would be
If
interesting.
they each did one lap on Fraser,
we'd need 11 guys to do one lap each.
they might beat you in that context. Maybe. Anyway,
Moving on.
moving on, now that we've made everyone upset. Okay, did you learn anything new about yourself? No.
I mean, I could make something up, but like the truth is I've been racing for a long time and I know I'm pretty good at not quitting.
I did say we all knew you were going to finish one way or another. It was just a matter of like how ugly it was going to get and how long it took.
I would put a little asterisk on that. I was planning to finish minus a catastrophic mechanical or crash.
Yeah.
Like small crash, I would have kept going. Small mechanical, I kept going.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just a question of like, how long was I going to be out there?
Will you submit this officially to the Everesting organization?
I have, and it was accepted. And I will put a link to it in the description if you guys want to check it out.
Are you going to take a break from mountain bike for a bit after this? Or are you getting straight back into it?
I took about 10 days off. Actually, that's not true. During those 10 days, Sid and I rode the e-bikes to get ice cream.
It's about a 15-minute ride. It was a big ride.
And then after those 10 days, though, I rode my dirt bike and then have ridden my mountain bike a couple times since. So I would say I'm not necessarily planning on going back to doing intervals anytime soon, but I will probably still be riding my mountain bike. I will definitely be riding my mountain bike. I'm going to be helping coach the NICA team, actually.
Yeah. All right, this is actually a question from me.
Oh, good. I'm going to read it then.
You're going to read it?
Yeah. This is from Andrew. Sid, you did an excellent job with the support crew on this epic adventure. Is there anything in the planning or backup side that you would have done differently?
I don't think so. I mean, I made more food than you ended up eating, for sure. I think I would have had more watermelon. We ran out of watermelon. It was definitely harder on the support end than I thought it was going to be, just in terms of like being that stressed out for like 17 hours. I think that was kind of necessary to just keep everything running smoothly. I think maybe we could have planned your food a little bit better. Like maybe we would do it differently knowing what we know now. The super fuel from scratch like really kind of saved the day though. Because that was what, by the end, that was like the only calories you were.
I definitely stopped doing the real, like the burritos and that kind of stuff while riding. I was still doing like fruit and stuff at the pit area.
Yeah, so actually that dovetails really nicely into this question from Kate, and she says, how was it to eat and then start climbing again? Would it have been better to have a cache of food at the top so you could eat then digest some while you descended?
No.
Yeah.
That descent was hard enough that I was pretty much focused on descending, and it would have been really hard to chew and swallow and breathe while descending. And honestly, I wasn't going hard enough to have eating be a problem. Like the physical act of eating was not the problem. It was just that I didn't feel like eating.
Yeah, and you didn't really have any digestive issues at all, which is pretty amazing for 17 hours.
I did for the next couple days, but not during the race.
Nobody asked this on Patreon, but your brothers all asked, did you poop during the ride?
I did not poop during the ride. I pooped before and I pooped after, but I held it for 18 hours.
Yeah.
I was really farty one of the laps. Poor Mike, man, he was riding with me on that lap. I felt really bad for him. I kept being like, sorry, because he was riding behind me. I was like, you should go in front of me.
You're probably going so slow, he had to be behind you. There was one clip of the video that Mackie was like, did you slow this down? And I had to be like, no, honey, you were actually moving that slow. Mark asks, was the ski resort okay with you setting up camp there? I feel like this is good advertising for the sponsors, and seeing what New Mexico has to offer, I want to visit. Just to clarify, Mackie was actually riding on north side at Taos Ski Valley, which is not owned by the ski valley. And we did call the guy who owns Northside.
Yeah, and he was super cool about it. He was like, that sounds awesome, good luck, have a great time up there, no problem. He would love people to go ride up there, so if you're interested in riding in northern New Mexico, Northside, Taos Ski Valley, it is not all dirt roads like I was riding.
They have trails.
There are some really cool trails, but they were slower, so I didn't ride them.
One quick question from Ken. Where are you going tubing next year? This is because someone asked if Mackie was going to climb 34K feet for his 34th birthday, and I said, heck no, we're going to go tubing and drink beer. So
I don't know where we're going to go tubing.
Hopefully on the Yuba, because hopefully we'll be racing Downieville. Okay, so we're going to close with the question that I think we got more than any other question, which is, Mackie, what the heck happened to your cranks? And I do think we really maybe should have explained this a bit more in the video, but at that point it was 30 minutes into the video. Everyone just wanted you to be done, kind of like you just wanted it to be over. So we didn't really go into detail on what happened, why his cranks froze up, but Paul asked what caused your crank to freeze up. And then on top of that, people were also kind of wondering the fact that your bike was creaking in the middle laps. Was that related to the cranks? Was that bottom bracket? What was that?
First of all, the creaking, not related to the cranks. That is the cassette. The bike might have needed a bath.
You think, after like 8 hours. It's very dry in New Mexico. Things just creak.
That was the cassette. It was creaking. What happened with the cranks is, if you want to zoom in here, on these new XTR cranks, there is this ring. And basically, you install the cranks, and then the ring is screwed out like this, and then the cranks can move back and forth like that. So you use this ring, and you screw it down like this, and that you screw it down to like sort of finger tight where it can't move back and forth, but your cranks still spin properly. And apparently, over the course of 17 hours, it, not surprisingly, I suspect just like dirt or something got in there and somehow provided some friction, and so it started tightening itself. And it basically just tightened itself and tightened itself and tightened itself until it froze my bottom bracket. So it basically just kept tightening this way until the bottom bracket bearings were so tight that my crank stopped moving. And then fortunately, Remy and Sid were there to help me, and I had a multi-tool, and Remy was able to stick like the little multi-tool Allen key in there and like get it to break free. Then we unscrewed it and did it back to the correct finger tightness. And I was able to finish.
I think that's just a reminder that like when you're doing really extreme things, you have extreme weird mechanicals. I think overall we did pretty good to only have 2 kind of fairly minor. Like the crank was stressful because you were like, I'm 17 hours in, I'm almost done. Like, am I not gonna be able to make it? But it was actually like quite easy to resolve. Hopefully this answered your question. If you have more, drop them in the comments and we will try to get back to you. And in the meantime,
don't forget
to be more awesome.